My name is Harper Holloway. I'm 31 years old, and 6 months ago, my mother stood up at Easter dinner, looked straight at me in front of 25 relatives, and announced that I was the only Holloway who couldn't put a roof over her own head. The room didn't go quiet. It didn't need to. My father nodded along like he always does. My sister laughed and leaned toward me with that soft, pitying smile people use when they think they're being kind. "You're jealous, aren't you?" she whispered. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't correct a single word. 2 weeks later, I invited her over for tea at my new address. When she walked through the front gate, she couldn't dial our mother's number fast enough. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. All she said was, "Mom, you have to see this right now." Before I take you back to how it got there, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and your local time in the comments. Now let me take you back to the night everything actually started to make sense. The apartment I lived in back then was a studio in southeast Portland, 540 square feet, one window that rattled every time a delivery truck passed, a kitchen faucet that dripped on a 3-second cycle no matter how hard I twisted the handle. I didn't hate it. At 28, I told myself this was normal. This was the price of starting from zero. And I mean zero. I worked as a cybersecurity analyst at a mid-size firm downtown. First real title after 4 years of contract work. $68,000 a year before taxes. Student loan payments of $1,400 a month. I ate rice, frozen vegetables, and whatever protein was on sale. I drove a 2011 Civic with a cracked dashboard. I kept a spreadsheet on my phone that told me exactly how much I could spend on groceries each week. That part of my life was real. What wasn't real was the story my mother told about why it looked that way. At every family dinner, she made sure people knew. "Harper's still renting a little studio," she'd say, not lowering her voice. "That tech thing she does, it's so unstable. I worry about her." People would glance at me with polite sympathy. I'd smile. I always smiled. What she never explained was why I had student loans at all. 2 weeks before my freshman year at Oregon State, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. She spoke softly, the way she always did when she'd already decided how things would go. "Sweetheart, your college fund didn't survive the market. It's gone." I cried. She held me. The next morning, she helped me fill out federal loan paperwork like it was the most normal thing in the world. At the time, I believed her. Meanwhile, my sister Meredith bought her first house at 27. 4 bedrooms, Lake Oswego, white kitchen, granite countertops. My mother told everyone the same thing. Meredith saved. She's always been responsible. I believed that, too. I believed it until a Tuesday night in November. I was sitting on the floor of my studio apartment, laptop open, debugging a firewall configuration for a presentation the next morning. My phone buzzed. Uncle Frank. He never called. We texted on birthdays. That was it. I answered. "Harper," he said, and his voice already sounded like he'd been carrying something too long. "I've gone back and forth about this for years, but I can't hold it anymore." "Hold what?" A pause. I could hear him breathing. "Your mother didn't lose your college fund." The faucet dripped. Once, twice. She withdrew it, every dollar. $42,380. March of the year you turned 18. I slid down from the couch until I was sitting on the cold tile floor. "I was at the bank," he continued. "I watched her sign the withdrawal form. I told her it was wrong. She told me to mind my own business." My chest felt hollow, like something important had quietly shut off. "The money went into her joint account with your father," Frank said. 2 weeks later, Meredith closed on her house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the wall while the numbers rearranged my entire past. $42,000. With conservative growth, that fund would have been worth close to $55,000 today. Enough to erase my loans. Enough to change everything. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing my mother had been lying to my face for 13 years. Comfortably. Consistently. Confident that I'd never find out. After we hung up, I didn't sleep. I lay on my back, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, listening to the faucet drip every 3 seconds, running the math in my head. If I confronted her, she'd deny it. She'd say Frank was dramatic. Meredith would defend her. My father would stay silent. And by morning, my mother would have already called every aunt and cousin to explain that poor Harper was confused, emotional, lashing out. I'd become the problem. If I stayed quiet, I stayed small. Neither option moved me forward. So at 2 a.m, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. 3 columns. Income, savings, target. I didn't write a confrontation plan. I wrote an exit plan. Confrontation gives liars a stage. I decided I'd build mine somewhere they couldn't talk over. I closed the laptop at 3:15 a.m., set my alarm for 6, and went to sleep. By the time my sister laughed at me at Easter dinner, the outcome had already been decided. She just didn't know it yet. The truth didn't arrive with drama. No shouting, no confrontation. Just a phone vibrating on my kitchen counter on a Tuesday night. It was 9:42 p.m. I remember because my pasta had just boiled over, and I was scraping starchy water off the stove with the back of a spoon. The name on the screen made me pause. Uncle Frank. We didn't talk much. Holiday texts, birthday likes, that was it. If he was calling, it meant one of 2 things. Something was wrong, or something had finally snapped. "Harper," he said when I picked up, voice tight. "I need you to tell me something, and I need you to hear it all the way through." I leaned against the counter and didn't say a word. He continued. "There was a college fund, your college fund, and it didn't disappear." The kitchen felt suddenly smaller. "What do you mean?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "I was at the credit union the day your mother withdrew it. I watched her sign the paperwork. I didn't sit down. I didn't interrupt. I just let the words land where they wanted to land. $42,380, he said, transferred into your parents' joint account 2 weeks before Meredith closed on her house." Silence filled the line. Not awkward silence, final silence. The kind that comes when something breaks so cleanly there's no sound at all. My mother had told me the fund was lost in the market, said it softly, apologetically, held me while I cried, then helped me fill out student loan forms the next morning. I thanked Uncle Frank, hung up, turned the stove off. I didn't cry. That came later. First came clarity. I sat on the floor of my studio apartment and opened my laptop, not to Google, not to rant, to calculate. 13 years, conservative growth, lost opportunity. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was this realization. They never planned to tell me. Not when I struggled, not when I rented, not when I worked 2 jobs, not when my sister posted keys and countertops and captions about hard work. I had been written out of the story on purpose. The next morning, my mother called. "Sweetheart," she said brightly, "your aunt mentioned you're looking for a cheaper place. I know someone in Milwaukee." "I'm not," I said. "Oh," she replied, quick and light. "Well, someone must have misunderstood." They hadn't. She had told them. I opened Facebook after hanging up. 3 messages. One from an aunt offering boxes, one from a cousin asking if I needed help moving, one from someone I barely knew saying no shame in downsizing, my mother had distributed my failure like a newsletter. That same day, Meredith posted photos of her kitchen renovation. Grateful, blessed, couldn't have done it without family. I didn't comment. I didn't confront. Because here's the thing no one tells you. Confrontation gives liars a stage. Silence takes it away. So I stopped talking. At work, at family events, on the phone, I worked. Harder than I ever had before. I took the project no one wanted, the deadline no one believed in, the account that kept senior leadership up at night. Easter at Meredith's house was never a meal. It was a performance. By the time I arrived, 25 relatives were already inside, coots piled on the bed upstairs, voices layered over each other like competing radio stations. The house smelled like honey-glazed ham and expensive candles my mother always brought, because the right scent mattered. She noticed me within minutes. "Harper," she said, eyes scanning me the way people check expiration dates. "You look tired. Are you still working those long hours?" I smiled. "Something like that." She turned immediately to Aunt Patrice. "She's been having a rough time lately. Rent increases. You know how it is." I did know how it was. I stood there while my life was summarized inaccurately in 3 sentences, the way it always was. Meredith floated nearby, confident, glowing, surrounded by compliments about her home. 4 bedrooms, my mother told someone, fixed-rate mortgage. She planned so well. Planned. I took a sip of water and watched my father stare intently at his plate like it held instructions for survival. Dinner was served at 2 tables, the adults at the main one, kids and overflow at the other. I was technically an adult, but somehow always ended up near the edge, close enough to hear everything, far enough to be ignored. Midway through the meal, my mother stood. She tapped her glass with a fork. "I just want to say how proud I am of Meredith. This house, this life, it's proof that responsibility pays off." Applause followed, soft, automatic. Then she turned slightly. "And Harper," she said, voice sweet, "we're all rooting for you. One day you'll get there too." There it was. Not encouragement, positioning, a reminder of where I stood. Meredith leaned toward me and whispered, loud enough for a few people to hear, "You're not jealous, right?" I looked at her. "Of what?" She gestured vaguely, the house, the attention, the approval. I didn't answer, because here's the thing. When people are certain you're beneath them, they don't expect silence, they expect explanation. After dessert, Meredith cornered me in the hallway. "You're acting weird," she said. "You didn't even ask about the renovation." "I saw it. Looks expensive." She laughed. "Well, when you make good choices." I met her eyes. "I did." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," I said calmly. "It means I made good choices." That unsettled her more than any accusation would have. 10 minutes later, I put on my coat. "Leaving already?" my mother asked loudly. "Yes." "Oh," she said, turning to the room. "Harper always leaves early. She gets overwhelmed." I stopped at the door. "Actually, Meredith," I said, turning back, "I'd love to have you over this weekend, for tea." The room went quiet. Her smile froze. "You want me to come over?" "Yes, Saturday. I'll send the address." My mother frowned. "What address?" "I moved," I said, lightly, "recently." A beat. "Oh," she replied, "that's nice." Her tone said temporary, rental, compromise. I smiled. "It is." Outside, the air was cold and clean. I sat in my car for a moment, hands steady on the wheel. I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready, because the next time my sister walked into my life, she wouldn't be able to narrate it. And when she saw where I lived, she would finally understand how wrong they'd all been. Saturday arrived without drama. No nerves, no rehearsed speeches, just quiet certainty. I cleaned the house slowly, not because it needed it, but because routine steadies the hands. Sunlight poured through the front windows and settled on the hardwood floors like it belonged there. The kettle whistled once, sharp and brief, before I turned it off. At 2:03 p.m., gravel crunched outside. I didn't rush. Through the window, I watched Meredith step out of her car and stop mid-stride. Her body did something small and involuntary. A pause. A recalculation. People don't freeze when they're impressed. They freeze when reality doesn't match the story they've been telling themselves. I opened the door. "Hey," I said. "You found it." She looked past me, up, around, past the front hallway into the living room, the windows, the deck beyond. "This is..." Her voice thinned. "Is this... yours?" "Yes." She stepped inside slowly, like the house might reject her if she moved too fast. "You bought this?" "Yes." "How?" The word came out sharp, uncontrolled. "I worked. I saved. I didn't announce it." She walked to the window, stared out at the trees, the slope of the land, the quiet distance from everything else. "You said you were renting." "I was." Her hand tightened around her phone. "You didn't tell anyone." "I wasn't ready." That wasn't entirely true. I just hadn't needed to. She dialed before she turned back to me. "Mom," she said the moment the call connected, "you need to come here, right now." Her hand shook. She sent the address and hung up without waiting for a response. For the first time in our adult lives, Meredith didn't know where she stood. We sat at the table in silence, tea untouched. When my parents arrived, my mother didn't knock. She opened the door and stopped short, her practiced smile collapsing before it fully formed. She took in the space, the way she evaluated people, quick, critical, searching for flaws. "This is..." She laughed softly. "Whose house is this?" "Mine," I said. Her mouth opened, closed. "You never said..." "You never asked." My father stepped in behind her. He said nothing. He just looked around, slow and careful, as if afraid to break something. "How long?" he asked. "Long enough." My mother turned on me then, fully. "How could you afford this? You've been struggling for years." I met her gaze. "No," I said. "You told people I was struggling." Silence landed heavy. Meredith sat down hard in the chair beside her. "That's not true," my mother said quickly. "I was worried about you. You told relatives I couldn't afford housing. You told them I needed help. You told them I was behind." She swallowed. "You let them believe it because it made you comfortable." Her voice rose. "After everything I've done for you..." "That's enough." The words were quiet, firm. My father flinched. "I'm not doing this here. I invited you to see my home, not to rewrite my life inside it." Meredith finally spoke. "You had student loans. You always said the college fund was gone." I nodded once. "Yes." My mother's eyes flicked to me, sharp now, warning. "And 2 weeks later, you closed on this house." Meredith's breath caught. "What?" I stood and went to the desk, opened the drawer, pulled out a single folder. I didn't slam it on the table. I placed it down gently. Bank statements don't need drama. "Read," I said. Meredith did. Her face changed as she went. Confusion, then disbelief, then something closer to grief. "You told me this was your savings," she whispered. My mother said nothing. My father sank into a chair. "You took her fund," Meredith said, voice breaking. "You took her money." My mother straightened. "It was family money." "It was in my name," I said, "and you never planned to tell me." The room felt smaller, thicker. No shouting, no denial left, just exposure. I didn't ask for apologies. I didn't ask for repayment. I didn't build this house to prove you wrong, I said evenly. I built it because I was tired of being small in your story. I looked at each of them. You don't get to narrate my life anymore. My mother looked around the room, searching for support. There was none. Meredith wiped her eyes. I didn't know, but I should have asked. Yes, you should have. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Inside, something old and carefully protected finally cracked. And for the first time, it wasn't me. They didn't leave right away. My mother stood near the window, hands folded too tightly, staring out at a view she hadn't earned and couldn't control. My father remained seated, shoulders slumped, as if the weight of years had finally found him. Meredith sat still, eyes fixed on the table, the bank statement folded and unfolded between her fingers until the creases went soft. No one argued. There was nothing left to argue with. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and returned it to the drawer. The click of the drawer closing sounded louder than it should have. I think you should go, I said. It wasn't anger, it wasn't punishment, it was simply time. My father stood first. He hesitated, then nodded once. You built something good, he said quietly. It wasn't an apology. It was the closest thing he had. Meredith followed him to the door. She paused at the threshold, turned as if to say something rehearsed, something that would put the world back where she liked it. Nothing came. Meredith lingered last. I don't know how to fix this, she said. You don't have to. Just don't lie about it. She nodded. Then she left. The door closed. The house exhaled. That night, I sat alone on the deck as the light drained from the valley. No phone calls came, no messages followed. Silence returned, but it was different now. It wasn't imposed, it was chosen. The days after were quiet in a way that felt earned. Family messages slowed, then stopped. A few relatives reached out, cautiously at first. Some apologized, some didn't. I didn't chase either response. My mother didn't call. Weeks passed. Meredith did. Not to explain, not to justify, just to say, I'm trying to unlearn some things. I told her that was enough for now. My father showed up one Saturday with a toolbox and fixed a loose railing without speaking much. We drank coffee afterward and watched the trees move in the wind. It wasn't reconciliation, it was reality. The house stayed mine. No one redecorated it with their opinions, no one narrated my choices, no one suggested I should be grateful for being underestimated. On a quiet evening, I stood in the living room and looked around. The walls were bare in places, the furniture still mismatched. It didn't matter. The space felt complete because it was honest. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had simply stopped letting them take from me. That was the revenge, if it could be called that. Not exposure, not humiliation, just withdrawal, of permission, of access, of the story they used to tell about who I was. The house didn't prove my worth, it protected it. And when the night settled and the lights came on one by one across the valley below, the quiet felt permanent, not lonely, finished.